Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Monday, except it's Tuesday evening, July the 23rd. We're so happy to have you in for another episode of the Primetime program. You know why we're happy to have you in for another episode of the Primetime program? Because holy hell, I have actual new stuff to talk about for the first time in the better part of 6 weeks. Ran Carthon, Brian Callahan speaking at a podium today. We talked Treylon Burks. We talked DeAndre Hopkins, Will Levis, Tavondre Sweat, L'Jarius Sneed, and so many other elements of this football team that we could not possibly get to all of them tonight based on the hour that we have spent with your head coach, your general manager, and your assistant general manager on the first day that the Tennessee Titans reported to training camp. So we will let you in on a couple of those conversations with Ran and Callahan. We'll also talk about the wide receiver futures for Treylon Burks and DeAndre Hopkins, respectively. Got a gone viral video for you at the end of the program, as is the custom. And we're looking forward to all of these things throughout the course of the show. Bree French says, I'm so thirsty, Buck. Don't worry, baby. Our cup runneth over with new Titans discussions to have. Jason wants to know who didn't show up. Everybody reported for training camp. Not everybody will be available to practice, though. In particular, Colton Dow and Nicholas Petit-Frere will both start the year on PUP. One will be on the reserve PUP, the physically unable to perform list, in Colton Dow because he tore his ACL late in the year. And the other will be Nicholas Petit-Frere, who will be on the active PUP, meaning that he's closer to a return than not, but still will not be ready for the start of training camp. So we have all manner of good stuff to get into. So instead of making you guys wait around, let's go ahead and get into it. You know how to share the show. You've done this a million times. Make sure you share this damn broadcast, or so help me God, I will come through the screen and shake you. I don't know why shaking you sounds like a threat right now, but you understand. Share this show. Make sure you do it. We appreciate when you do. Brown and Casey says, saw Levis was the first in to the practice facility. Yes, Donald Page, the team photographer, on his Instagram story, took a really artistic-looking photo of Levis's Mercedes in the parking garage by itself and noted that the quarterback was the first one in the building today. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. I am proud, as always, to be presented to you by the wonderful people at TrueMav Fitness in the Gulch. Your first workout is free at the best workout in Middle Tennessee. TrueMavFitness.com for more information. Zen Sports is where you go. Betting just got better with the Zen Sports app. Download the app, plug in the promo code ATOZTN. You see it directly over my shoulder here, and get up to $100 on your no danger first wager. And of course, the South's most trusted Ford dealer, Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, or online at tworiversford.com for more information. Randy Howard says, a good shaking sounds kinky, Buck. Well, I'm not here to satisfy Randy's sexual gratifications, but I am here to talk to you about your football team, because your football team is back, which means that I once again have purpose to my life as a Tennessee Titans reporter. Praise be. So there was a lot of different ground covered today at the press conferences. To make it general for you guys, maybe you saw the press conferences, maybe you didn't have the opportunity to see all of it. Maybe you saw a handful of quotes and comments about specific things. But as your Two Rivers Ford take, what was your biggest takeaway from Ran Carthon, well, I guess in order, Brian Callahan, Ran Carthon, and assistant general manager Anthony Robinson, who all spoke to the media today? Looking through the transcripts, we talked about basically everything that's gone on in the last couple of weeks and the ramp up leading into it, how the expectations change for training camp, and now Brian Callahan leading the franchise into this new era of Titans football under his vision, under he and Ran Carthon's vision, with Will Levis as the full-time, undisputed starting quarterback for the first time in his professional career. There is a lot of different changes beyond that, beyond just the surface level stuff that we've dived into. We've talked about the ins and outs, running back depth. What are they going to do on the edge? Do they need more safety help? They've even had a fair amount of, they've had quite a few. They had 7 new hires in the front office and 13 promotions in the front office for a lot of different moves being made in the organization, top to bottom. And it's a pretty fascinating study on how this thing is going to work. And we're learning, just as you guys are learning, as we progress through. Danny Whitson says his biggest takeaway was questions being answered. How about Brian Callahan leading off with telling us players on PUP what the cause of the injury was, even clarifying an injury situation in the case of Nicholas Petit-Frere by saying, hey, just so you guys know, it's not his shoulder that's keeping him off the practice field, because of course, the shoulder is what ended his 2023 season. Callahan was quick to point out, just so you know, for future context, he had a knee scope. That's what's got him on PUP. He's on the active PUP. Done and dusted. It's beautiful, right? Beautiful to have one of those. I cannot believe the idea that a Titans coach, look at me, I sound like Biden. The idea, I cannot believe the idea that a Titans head coach would lead a press conference with an injury update. What fresh hell is this? But there is transparency there to an extent, right? They can't tell us all the ins and outs. We even talked about the Derrick Henry thing. Ran Carthon said he never got offered a conditional fourth that could have been a third-round pick for Derrick Henry, even though that was reported by Dan Pompei of The Athletic, which is pretty interesting to see the general manager, when asked about it, come out and say, no, I don't know where that came from. Pretty crazy stuff. All right, so a lot of moving parts on this first day. What was your biggest takeaway? It's your Two Rivers Ford take on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. It's presented by Two Rivers Ford. The South's most trusted Ford dealer is Two Rivers Ford. Quality American-made Ford vehicles, award-winning customer service. I myself am a Two Rivers Ford customer. You know this. I drive around in my Two Rivers Ford 2022 Ford Explorer, and I love it. Her name is Sugar, and I got to custom order it when I custom ordered my new vehicle online at Two Rivers Ford. But if you're an old school person, you can shop at the dealership. You can test drive one of their new or certified pre-owned vehicles for yourself. And if you don't have time to get to the dealership, you can schedule a test drive. They'll bring the vehicle to your home or office, and you can do it at your leisure. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, or online at tworiversford.com, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. So, what was your biggest takeaway from the Titans press conferences today? Dr. David Fan on YouTube. They seemed open and honest, excited for camp. Major Keys says Burks had that talk, quote unquote, which is something that we are going to get to. MB says that's why people need to be held accountable for putting garbage out there, talking about the Ran Carthon being asked and refuting the report about this. It's completely fair criticism from MB, and not to get bogged down on a football day and a media topic, but there is not a lot of accountability for media, right? Our accountability is you guys, right? I've gotten stuff wrong before. I've gotten got on some things. I have had situations where I thought for sure something was happening. I remember walking into the radio studio the day that Todd Downing got fired, talking to a source with direct knowledge of the situation, saying not getting fired, sat down, did the radio show. Todd Downing didn't get fired. And then at 4 p.m. that day, Todd Downing got fired. That shit happens sometimes, but there does need to be a greater level of accountability on media that way. It's incumbent upon media to hold themselves accountable to an extent, and media people can sometimes be loath to hold themselves accountable, which is why I appreciate you guys, because you guys will mess me up anytime I get something wrong, which is fair. It's completely fair. For the way that I can be kind of strident on things, I absolutely expect that same kind of energy from you all when I do make mistakes, or when something does go wrong and we have to talk about it, right? But anyway, that's an interesting topic, but not an important topic on a day like today, because there were many important topics discussed today. And in particular, an important topic of all of this stuff is the state of the quarterback, Will Levis.
Yeah, Will's in a really good place. I'm excited about what he's going to play like. I'm excited to see it, but it's more just about playing on time. Is getting that timing back. The accuracy, the timing, and decision making are sort of the three things that you look for, especially early on, and try to get that developed as quickly as possible, kind of get back into the flow. And so those would be what I'm looking for. And I think that having Will, the work that he put in, how he looks right now is exciting. And now we got to go do it.
How pleased were you to hear that he took down Cabo and gathered guys at the end of the
Yeah, it's great. That's what your quarterback, that should be doing. You should have a guy that's going to take a leadership role with the team and make sure that he's bringing guys with him. And that's a big part of leadership is bringing people along with you. And I thought he's done a fantastic job of setting the tone for those guys on offense and putting the necessary work in to have a chance to be successful and being able to have a leadership presence that, he probably is the first time he's had since he was in college. So I'm excited about that. I think guys responded well to it.
That's Brian Callahan, the Titans head coach, speaking today about quarterback Will Levis. A to Z Sports Primetime is presented by Zen Sports. Download the app, plug in the promo code ATOZTN. Get up to $100 on your no danger first wager. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. The must be 21 plus and in the state of Tennessee to bet. So that is Will Levis, or Brian Callahan, speaking about where Will Levis is at this point. The command that he's taken, right? Citing the trips to Cabo. Ran also brought up that with Levis, liking to see that kind of leadership, that kind of control, owning this opportunity. Will Levis has the chance to own this opportunity, to own this, not to own this franchise in the literal sense, but to make this franchise his own, right? To make this team his own based on the leadership void that has been left by Mike Vrabel, Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and that era of Titans football essentially being swept out the door this past offseason with those last vestiges of the 2019-2020 teams that were at their peaks in those seasons. We're a long time removed from that. It's 5 years from the AFC Championship appearance for the Tennessee Titans. That is a long time. Most teams go through an entire life cycle of competitiveness in that same span. The Titans held on a little longer than average, but still, they no longer get credit for the 2019 AFC Championship game, making it to the 2019 AFC Championship game. Because guess what? Nobody but Harold and Jeff were on those teams on this, who are still on this team, were on those teams anymore. So it doesn't matter that team made the 2019 AFC Championship game. This team has done nothing and has yet to prove what it is capable of, and has the opportunity to prove what it's capable of. Will Levis is the motor for that. Will Levis is the engine. He's the catalyst for all that. And I think that's where Ran Carthon, Brian Callahan, and everybody who spoke about Will Levis today are coming from in their viewpoint of him and the way that they see him interact in the, little things like showing up first today and continuing to do so. That was probably my biggest takeaway of all the different things that we talked about. And we did talk about a great deal. I'm going to have a piece up at atozsports.com probably for you tomorrow morning before training camp begins on how the standard for training camp practices changes for the quarterbacks, not just Levis, but Levis in particular, from the offseason program to training camp, and where Brian Callahan emphasizes those improvements that they are required to make. So from Levis to wide receivers, because one is the most important and the other one is not the second most important. That's probably the offensive line, though we did talk a lot about the offensive line today with those three gentlemen as well. There was a lot of discussion around wide receivers, in particular Treylon Burks and a physical transformation that he's undergone. For those of you who may follow him on Instagram, I think he posted it to his story, and the possibility of a DeAndre Hopkins contract extension. So with that in mind, the conversation that we are going to have on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch is this. As you look at the Titans wide receivers, are you more concerned with Treylon Burks in 2024 or DeAndre Hopkins' potential contract in 2025? What is the more interesting? What do you gravitate more towards wanting on your football team? Treylon Burks proving himself in 2024, or the idea of DeAndre Hopkins on this roster beyond this season to come? Those two things have connections, right? There are connection points that makes one that could make one more viable than the other, right? I think right now, if you were to answer the question, and many of you will answer the question, you would just shrug your shoulders and say, well, Treylon Burks hasn't done anything yet. DeAndre Hopkins is the thing that's more interesting here, or more tangible, because you've seen DeAndre Hopkins do it in a Titans uniform better than Treylon Burks has at any point in the last 2 years. So Burks this year or Hopkins next year, what is the more interesting thing to you as a Titans fan? Let's see. Frankie on Facebook Live says, Buck, you know you're on Jeff's shit list? As far as I know, I'm not on Jeff's shit list, but we invited him on the radio show because we'll start doing training camp broadcasts. So if Jeff has an issue with the position that I took on his subtweeting about his media coverage and things like that, I'm looking forward to talking to Jeff, to Arden, to Levis. Tajay Spears is on the radio show tomorrow, all of them. So if they have an issue with me, the beauty of that is I'm not one of these people that just screams into a microphone and then has no accountability, right? We talked about media accountability. The thing about me is I'm there every day. So when I talk shit or when I have a point to make, we are going to have a dialogue about it one way or the other, because I'm going to talk to you at some point in the locker room. I'm going to have you on the radio show at some point, and that will be the opportunity, if there are any issues taken with positions that I have, to address them. And we can talk about them like adults, because this has to be I'm not these guys' friend, but we have to have a professional working relationship, because we're going to be around it. I spend more time with your football team than I do with my family on an annual basis, because that's what this job requires. And it's great, right? But, if I am on the shit list, then we'll talk about it, and we'll see if I can't work. We'll see if we can't find compromise. Maybe I stay on the shit list. Maybe he's entrenched in his position. I have no idea, because I haven't talked to Jeff in, 4 months, 5 months at this point, and that'll change probably tomorrow. So what we have here on the discussion is, can I say both, says Danny? No, I want Burks to succeed because he wears a Titans uniform. Randy Howard says, not that I expect it, but I think the most realistic answer is Burks taking a huge leap, a huge step forward to make it easier to move on from Hop. Karen says she's most interested in DeAndre Hopkins and a potential extension. Daniel Perez on Facebook Live says Burks for sure, because he is much younger in age. Louis says, I got issues with blocking comments. I don't even think Bert's paying attention. Bert, the camera is pointing up, which means Bert is naked and running around elsewhere right now. So I'm not sure who might be blocking your comments, Louis, if you feel like your comments are being blocked. But that's all well and good. I think that there's a lot to like about both situations, because Treylon Burks is cheap right now. That's the best thing that you can say about Treylon Burks in a situation, is that he is cost effective. But when Ran Carthon was asked about Treylon Burks today, he had a lot of favorable commentary to add to the discussion.
I think Treylon's really grown up. He sent us a picture, of during the offseason, this little break here, showing his new physique. He came in and he really took to heart, the conversation that he had with myself and with Coach Callie. And he's completely bought in. I've, messaged with him, throughout the off season, and I think he's in a really good spot. And again, we added Tyler, and we added Calvin. Obviously, D Hop was here, but for a young guy like that, he has vets that he can learn from. And again, with him and his size and his speed and his explosiveness, and now, he can be an X, he can be a Z. Tyler's primary spot is probably going to be the F. You know what I mean? So I'm expecting, things from him, and just his unselfishness. I know it was some talk about him taking gunner reps, but that was because he wanted to. He wants to prove that he can stay healthy and play top level football.
So that's Ran Carthon today at the press conference, speaking to Treylon Burks' physical transformation. And listen, whatever Treylon's pitfalls have been to date, I've never had a doubt in my mind that he doesn't work hard, right? I think Treylon Burks works really hard. I think that he has had a lot of circumstances befall him that are common in football, but because of the echo chamber that is the A.J. Brown trade, right? And he will forever be associated with it. It makes the degree of difficulty on Treylon Burks harder to overcome because there's so many extenuating circumstances associated with Treylon Burks beyond him just not being productive yet, as consistently productive yet as an NFL player. But that doesn't mean that you should give up, nor does it mean that you should trade him away because you signed a couple of wide receivers in the offseason. Treylon Burks is a cost-effective player who still has years of team control, cost-effective team control left on his rookie contract. This will be year 3 of Treylon Burks in 2024, which means they still have the 4th year and the 5th year option at their disposal because he is a first-round pick. So Treylon Burks is a fascinating situation here. I personally would be more, if I was a Titans fan, and I had to look at this from your guys' perspective, I love Hopkins. I think Hopkins is excellent. My preference would be for DeAndre Hopkins to return in 2025. But the thing that I would be more personally invested in is seeing Treylon Burks succeed or fail, because that has potential future implications beyond just one season. If Treylon Burks pans out, whatever panning out looks like for Treylon Burks at this point in his career, to the point where you're comfortable not extending DeAndre Hopkins, or you're comfortable not bringing back Tyler Boyd, or you're comfortable not paying top of the market money for a tier 2 wide receiver like Calvin Ridley, who is a great player, but is still kind of, I mean, it's an overpay, right? We talked about the "we suck" luxury tax. The Titans paid that in spades this offseason and had to, absolutely had to. Just because Calvin Ridley is an overpay, or L'Jarius Sneed is an overpay, or Lloyd Cushenberry is an overpay, or whoever, Tony Pollard, whoever you want to consider, whoever you think in your mind got too much money from the Titans this offseason, you can think that. It can be true, and it also be absolutely necessary because this team was talent bereft and they have to kickstart it somehow. So, point being, with Burks, I personally would be more invested in Treylon Burks if I was a Titans fan, because you still have, I think, more to potentially gain there. Hopkins, you know what you have. And I don't want to call him a depreciating asset because I don't think that does him justice on who he is, how he's handled this leg of his career, and the fact that I still think that he can be a productive player, whatever productive looks like for a 32, going to be, well, he just turned 32, last month? So a 32-year-old wide receiver, he's a depreciating asset only because his age, and he's not at the peak of his powers anymore, but he's still a really, really high-level player. So Hopkins is interesting, but Treylon Burks is probably more important.
I've gotten to know him. D-Hop is straightforward. And D-Hop and I, we can have some straightforward conversations, and we have, and we do. And so D-Hop knows how we feel about him, and I think that's a big thing, especially for a veteran, at this stage in his career. And I think the way he's shown up here, the way he's bought into a new staff, kind of shows how he feels about us and what we have going on.
So that's Ran Carthon when asked today about a potential D-Hop extension. His point before that was, we're not going to make the family business public, but that they had conversations about a handful of players on their roster. He didn't make it specifically about Hopkins, but they have had conversations about a handful of players on the roster, and they have decided on who they would like to keep around and who they might be comfortable moving on from. Those conversations are had much earlier in the season than I think people realize. Hell, they're had before the season begins, because you have to have your cap and your finances allotted well in advance of December or November, when you might think that teams are still making decisions on whether players that they want to keep around into future seasons. A lot of those decisions are made well in advance, even before training camp begins, or at least you identify those players, right? As opposed to making moves immediately. That way, you do let the season play out in that respect. All right, a gone viral video is what we will end with tonight on the program. What's the best thing you saw on the internet this week? Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. We will discuss at length together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by Gary Ashton, the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage, the official real estate agent of the Nashville Predators, the official real estate agent of me. I love my home. Love my home. I wouldn't have bought a home at 25 years old because I did not think myself financially stable. I probably wasn't financially stable at 25 years old, but my buddy Gary gave me great advice. He said, listen, the best thing that you can do, the best thing that you can invest in is real estate here in Middle Tennessee. He found me the perfect location. It is 10 minutes from the practice facility. It is 10 minutes from Nissan Stadium. It is probably 12 minutes to 104.5 The Zone on Music Circle, where I do my radio show 5 days a week. And it has been the best financial decision that I ever made in my life, all on the advice of that man, Gary Ashton. I could kiss him on his beautiful bald head. GaryAshton.com for more information. Don't sell without the intel. That's the intel that I'm talking about. And you can always improve your intel at GaryAshton.com, the best in the business. All right, gone viral. What caught your attention on the internet this week? What is the best thing that you saw on the internet this week? One of the more compelling things that I saw was a pretty honest conversation with Bengals owner Mike Brown. Don't see owners that are not Jerry Jones or Jim Irsay interviewed very often. And I think it's a cool look at how some owners can get involved, get over their skis on the football stuff. And in a rare case of self-awareness, Mike Brown is saying, yeah, I overstepped based on a conversation that I had with Joe Burrow, my starting quarterback last year.
One day at practice, you picked up Joe Burrow on your golf cart and you drove him around practice and then took him back. Do you remember that conversation and what was said there? And also, what is your relationship like in general with Joe Burrow?
I try to stay away enough that I don't get in the way. I don't want to be a problem for the coaches. On that in that particular moment, I overstepped and did a dumb thing. I was convinced he shouldn't play, and he looked like he wanted to play in that game, and I went out there to tell him he wasn't going to play. I was going to make sure he wasn't going to play, whereupon he played. And so that's all that happened. I still feel a little bit shamefaced about it.
It's a pretty interesting look at the owner, player, coach, front office dynamic, because, it's the owner's thing, right? The owner can do whatever he wants to do. But in that moment, Mike Brown realized that he overstepped and went to talk to Joe Burrow about keeping him out of a game because of the calf injury that he was dealing with at the time. And ultimately, Joe Burrow, I'm not sure what Joe Burrow's end of the conversation sounded like, but ultimately Joe Burrow played because Mike Brown doesn't, even though he's the owner, he doesn't know all the time what's in the best interest of the football team or the best interest of the player. And I thought that was a pretty rare look at self-awareness from an owner, because I don't think many of them are self-aware, nor do I think many of them would admit doing something that they felt ashamed about or embarrassed about after the fact in front of microphones and cameras the way that Mike Brown did. So I thought that was a pretty compelling video. Yes, I did see that CeeDee Lamb is not reporting to training camp. It sounds like he's holding out. People are asking me about Stillman quotes. I didn't see what he said today, so I'm not sure what on earth Jared is ranting about now, but I always do enjoy when people send me things from my friend Jared, because he is certainly off the wall on a regular basis. I think that Eric being homophobic, saying, bro, you just said a few shows ago that bald dudes look like penises. Now you're going to kiss Gary Ashton on his bald head? Yeah. What's your point? You're going to be okay, Eric. It's going to be okay. Happy June. Anyway, that is going to do it for us on the Primetime program. We appreciate you guys hanging out. Radio show tomorrow. Tajay Spears is going to begin our Titans training camp interview series. We will have players. We will have people associated with your team, on your team every day that we are out at training camp. And we are going to be at every training camp. I'm going to be at every training camp practice, but we're going to be doing the show every day at training camp practice while they're open for the next month and a half, basically. So you can expect players. Make sure you subscribe to the 104.5 The Zone YouTube channel so you can watch those conversations as well. It will be a great time had by all from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. Have a great rest of your evening, and I will talk to you when we speak with Tajay Spears then.
Go home! Go home! Go home! You're embarrassing Nashville! Go home!